Hello once again, witchy people, welcome back to the Cobhamstead and a bit of a project today. Now this is going to take a few days to do, so be warned. The hairstyles will change, the clothes will change, where I am will change. So, Ostara. Now this is to go with my Sabbat Spicerack, and Ostara is a really difficult one for me because it's not something that I celebrate really too much of. I know it sounds weird, but I don't. Even as a child, we didn't really celebrate Easter or anything like that. So it's, you know, it's a difficult one for me, but there are certain things that I do associate with Ostara. And of course the main one being eggs. And I'm talking normal everyday eggs. So I have a recipe and a craft project which you may or may not be interested in, and it's how to make chalk. And you're probably wondering to yourself, what's she going on about? Chalk, eggs, Anyway, so the first thing you need to do is get yourself some eggs and make a cake. Save the eggshells. Or an omelette, poached egg, nice bit of scrambled egg, English scrambled egg. I like English scrambled eggs rather than American scrambled eggs. And if you want to know the difference is, like, okay, when English people make scrambled eggs, they whisk up the egg before cooking it, and they cook it in a pan, but they whisk it up with a little bit of milk or cream, and then they cook it. It's not just eggs sort of like in a pan done. We put milk in it, or at least you do if you were born before the 70s. I think people born after the 70s don't tend not to do it anymore. But anyway, so that's the difference. I'm going way off here. Anyway, there you go, the difference between English and American scrambled eggs. So you will need a few things, obviously, other than eggs. You will need a pestle and mortar. If you can, you want a coffee grinder, and a really good strong one. So this one has, as you can see, a very small bowl, but it's quite long, so it's got a powerful motor. A normal food processor really won't do, because you want to either grind or by hand or by the coffee grinder your eggshells. You want to grind them into a finer powder as you can. Now when you make this chalk, it's really good for drawing on the pavement, drawing on bad wooden floors, on wooden walls and walls that you're not too fussy about. You can use it to draw on a chalkboard, but it can be a bit scratchy. The finer you get the egg, the less scratchy your chalk will be. But it's really useful for like drawing pentagrams on the floor, drawing circles on the floor, drawing doors, you know, anything like that. And it's also a really good way to keep your egg. If you use crushed eggs a lot, this is a really good way to save it as well. So I've already prepared some eggs, as you can see, and I will now put in the video that I made showing you how I prepared the eggs, which I'm going to have to talk over because the sound didn't work. Okay, so here we have nice fresh eggs. Well, as fresh as I'm going to get anyway. And obviously they've been used. Best thing to make is lemon drizzle cake. And what you'll find is there's a little membrane just inside the egg. And what you want to do is to get as much of that out as you can. You see, it's just like this little membrane, and it's easier to get out. First of all, if you boil the eggs first, so if you like boiled eggs, use that first. But also when they're first cracked, it's much easier to get them out, and it's quite often easier to get the eggshell away from the membrane rather than try to peel the membrane out of the eggshell. So you just discard the membrane when you're done with it. You don't really need it, and you don't have to be really fussy. You don't have to get everything out. Make sure they're really clean. And then when you've done that, what you're going to do is you're going to put these eggshells into a oven-proof dish and put them in the oven. And all this is for is to kill off any salmonella bacteria, that sort of thing, and make sure that they're nice and clean. I usually bake mine in a low oven for maybe a couple of hours. Wasn't that easy? Okay, so when they're completely dry, you don't have to put them in the oven. You can leave them to dry on the side. Like I said, I only put them in the oven because it's a surefire way of killing that salmonella if there's any there. So next, when they're all dry, obviously that's when you're going to start grinding them down. Now I would suggest the first thing you're going to need is a good mask, because the powder from the egg, it can smell slightly odd. It really gets the back of your throat. So yeah, use one of those. Like I said, I use a coffee grinder, and obviously I do bits at a time. I do probably about 10 to 15 eggshells at a time, crushed up, put them in there and just let it go. And when you're finished, rinse it out straight away, clean it straight away, or else it sort of like grabs the moisture from the air and sets hard as rock. So yeah, make sure it's clean. And there you've got, see, mine's quite powdery. It's not super powdery. It could be more powdery, but I don't want to risk breaking my grinder. This grinder's used quite a lot in my practice, to be honest. So, right, you're also going to need some gloves. Now, this is also done, it's done by volume, not weight. So you're going to need a measuring spoon or something to measure your ingredients with. And the other ingredients you're going to need is plain flour. I guess that's all-purpose flour in America. So just plain old flour, it doesn't rise or anything. And good old water. And I use warm water because I think it's easier. You're going to need a mixing bowl, which I forgot completely. You're going to need some kitchen towel, and you're going to need a mould. This isn't essential. It's just what I prefer. Now this is I think this is what they call an energy bar mould. So they're quite small. They're not that deep. See, they're quite shallow. But this is a good size. Now you can get moulds that are longer and thinner. The best ones, I think, maybe are the ones that you get the long thin ice cube trays. If you can get one of those in silicone. And they're quite good. But I find that these are my favourite, this sort of size. What you may also want, depending on your practice and how you're going to use this chalk, is colourant. So food dye is fine, but you've got to bear in mind that will then stain as you use it on different surfaces. And any essential oils you want to put in, if you want to, which just makes it smell nice. So if you get like a daffodil or a tulip scent at this time of year, it's quite nice. Chrysanthemum leaves are also bit early, I suppose, but there's lots of things you can kind of like put in there if you wanted to, but bear in mind what you're going to be using the chalk upon, so you don't want to damage things too much. So I'm just going to go and get my bowl and then I'll be back. Okay, so I've brought the camera down so you can see. I've just got a little pudding bowl and a knife to make sure that I get all the ingredients equal. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put my egg in, because that's obviously I've only got a finite amount of egg. So and the easiest way to do this is any mother who's ever had a baby and had to prepare baby milk, you'll know exactly what I'm doing. You're just levelling it off so that you know it's going to be equal. Now the ratio to this is equal amounts of each. So for every 1 spoonful, this is a tablespoon, for every tablespoon of egg powder that I put in a tablespoon of flour and a tablespoon of water. So I've got to keep count. And I think a tablespoon works out at about between 10 and 15 eggshells, depending on your eggshells. 3, Oh, that smells funny. 5. You can see the cloud of dust coming off it. 5. I don't know how many I've done now. I'm going to have to play this back and count, aren't I? I think that might be enough. Yeah, that'll do for now. So I'm now going to go back and count how many of those I put in so I can count the right amount of flour and water. Okay, I did 10. And then I put an extra one in off camera, so there's 11 in there. So now I have to put in 11 tablespoons of flour, exactly the same. You notice I did clean my spoon as well. Now I don't know if using different flours, like whether it's self-raising flour or corn flour or durum wheat flour, I don't know if it makes any difference. I've just always used plain flour, so that's what I'm going to carry on using. But I've got a funny feeling that corn flour would actually, and that's British corn flour, not corn flour in America. It's two different things. So yeah, English corn flour. I wonder if that would be better. Anyway, I'll put this on fast forward and I'll count 11. Okay, that was 11, and now 11 spoons of water. First of all, I'm going to mix this. Make a little well in the middle, like I'm making pasta. Which is a lie. If I was making pasta, this would be out on the table. I have got Italian blood in me, you know. Okay, so now you have to mix this into a thick paste, and this is where you're going to need your gloves in a minute. So if there's too much water, you're going to have to add more. Oh, it smells awful. Yeah, you're going to have to add more flour and more egg. But the ratio should be about right. No, this is slightly too wet, I think. I mean, you want it wet enough to hold onto a mould, but you don't want it to flatten out when you take it out of the mould. So yeah, I'm going to add a little bit more to that. Tissue to wipe off my one of those. One of those. I wonder if I should do 2. I'm going to go with, oh, but then that means 13. No, I'm not going to do that. I'll see how this turns out first. This is where I'm going to put my gloves on, or a glove on. And really get in there. And you don't want it to, I split it already. You don't want it to stick too much to your glove or your bowl. It's kind of like when you make a good bread dough, it doesn't stick to the sides. Oh, I can see a bit of eggshell there. Now, will that hold its... No, I don't think it will. So... broken. Oh, crikey. I'm covered. 2 of those. Not that I'm superstitious or anything. Two of those, 1 chicken feather. God, I've got bits of egg, bits of chicken feather. Yeah, it's sticking a bit, so I know it does need that little bit more. So it's probably best really to start off with less water than you need. Like I said, it also depends on how well your eggshells are ground up. If they're ground up really, really well, obviously they're a finer powder, you'll get more in there. Okay, that's going to need a little bit more water, and I do mean a little bit. So maybe half a tablespoon, I think. And now it's beginning to smell a little bit like a cross between plaster of Paris and plasticine. So it's kind of like when I squeeze it, and I know it's not sort of like spreading out when it's resting, and it holds its shape a bit, then I know it's okay. And I don't want it to stick to the bowl or my gloves, which is why you use this silicone. Now some people will put a bit of that stuff, flour in their mould before to stop it from sticking. You shouldn't need to. There we go. So that looks pretty much, it's slightly sticky, but not too sticky. And if I make an indent, it holds it pretty much. So hopefully that's going to be okay. So next, you're either going to need a mould, or if you haven't got a mould and you just want to make sticks, what you do is you grab a piece of paper and you grab a bit. Now you can either roll it in your hands, but the best way to do it is to kind of roll it in the paper, and then when you're finished making the shape you want, you just leave it, and you leave it for 3 days roughly. Just leave it to dry out. If you then go to use it and it starts crumbling when you use it, it's not dry enough. Leave it for another day. So I'm going to use this like an ice cream scoop, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to use 1 scoop per. I'm going to really stick it in there, and when all these are full, all I'm going to do is I'm going to leave them a day in here, and then I'm just going to flip them out onto kitchen roll and leave them for another couple of days and see how they do. The problem is with this is you really need to get it in there. You really want to squash it in, because you want it to be nice and firm. And you can go with a bit of sandpaper, you know, when it's finished, and just make the end all nice and neat. But you see, mine aren't white, they're kind of like a slightly off-white colour, a bit of ecru there maybe. So yeah, so you do that and you fill them all in, and when I've done that and I've left them for a day, I'll come back and I'll show you me emptying them out, and then a few days after that we'll see how they do. So there you go. I'll be back. Ew. For you, a few seconds. For me, maybe a day or two. It is the following day, and you can tell it's a very cold one because I've got my big hooded house gown. So, following day, and when the family were cooking dinner, when they turned the oven off, I popped this in just to help dry it off a little bit. So yeah, just the residual heat, and it was just not even for an hour, possibly 3/4 of an hour. Now you can dry these off, I think, completely in an oven. So your next job, when they are, these aren't, even though they have been in an oven, they're not ready yet. And you'll see as I poke one out, you see this, you can see the colour difference. Don't know if you can see that. See, it's much lighter here, going up to darker. So this is definitely still, oh, and I stamped on them. Only lightly, very lightly, with my wax seal stamp. I just stamped on them because I thought it would be quite nice. So there you go, that's what they will look like. So they need to come out, and I'm going to put them this way up so that the damper side is upwards, and I'm just going to lay them out and leave them for, I think, at least 3 days. I'm going to see how they pop out of here. I can still feel that they're damp in there, and I've had an idea. Now, somewhere up in my craft room, I have a box of, oh, this one's not done too well. If you don't pack this in tight enough, they won't release very well. Yeah, so I have a box somewhere, or partially filled box of plaster of Paris. Remember I said earlier that this smelled like plaster of Paris and plasticine. So what I'm going to do is now I know you can use just plaster of Paris to make, and water to make chalk. I'm going to use plaster of Paris with equal amounts, instead of, yeah, basically I'm going to replace the flour with plaster of Paris if I can find it. I'm going to see how that turns out. So yeah, it smells like a really weird omelette. So most of them, I think, are fine. They're coming out, and that they're a nice size to hold and to use. So yeah, you just leave these to dry. So as you can see, the ones that I've taken out so far have come out quite well, except for this one, which for some reason is very wet, and there's like a little stuck bit up in the corner, and I suppose I could, as they're for my own use, just stick that bit back on like that. Now, when I make the plaster of Paris ones, if I can find my plaster of Paris, I do know that sometimes, depending on the plaster of Paris, it can react when you put water in it, and they get hot. Yeah, the plaster of Paris, when you mix it with water, can get hot, so don't use warm water with that, and protect yourself and be very, very careful, because you don't want to get, I don't know how hot the reaction's going to be. As you know, as I said before, I've never actually made this chalk with plaster of Paris. The reason why I'm laying it on kitchen towel is so that the kitchen towel will soak up any moisture. It needs to be in quite a dry room. And so that batch that you saw me do with this batch has made perfectly 20 of these little rectangles. So that is the only one so far, last one. That was the only one that had any left sticking in. So I'm going to put this somewhere, hopefully where the sun can get to it, which might be a bit difficult in this house because that's where the cats like to sit. But yeah, so I'm going to put these out to dry. I think I'm going to leave them for 3 days because they do feel, even though they've obviously been out almost 24 hours and they've been in a very barely warm oven for 3/4 of an hour or so, they still feel very damp. So yeah, I think these are going to need at least 3 days, possibly more. Like I said, you'll know when they're ready because if you go to write on them, these are actually quite rough. I might do the eggshell a bit more next time, but yes, when you go to write with them, if they start crumbling, it means they're not dry yet. So there you go, my little witch chalks ready to be finished drying out. And that's, you know, because you use eggshells for protection, it's, I mean, you can draw around your house or draw, you know, sigils and markings on the pavement outside your house or on your garden path, that sort of thing. So it's a very protective kind of magic, and perfect for a star, I think, because it's eggs. So there you go, my Sabbat Spicerack for Ostara with a little little crafting project. And when these are fully dry, I will let you know how they work, and when I do the plaster of Paris ones, I'll hopefully get that done too. So I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you for watching, thank you for listening, witchy people. I'll be back very soon. Bye for now.